trainings for it. Everyone expects it, that it kind of just happens on the side. But I've had a few experiences where that was not enough and I needed to actually plan my communication, where it became more of a hard skill. I also saw that you guys entered a lot of questions upon signing up. So I try to address all these different expectations and questions. But in case I miss out on anything that you really want me to dig into, there will also be points where you can ask questions in between. You can also just ask the questions as I'm going along, and we will check on them later. So your participation is, just like we already said, is highly encouraged. So before going into the content, maybe just a little bit about myself, so you kind of know where also I'm coming from and my experiences were. And I think one of the main things that I was thinking about when I was reflecting on this talk and putting down like my journey is, if you would have told me 4 years ago that I would be senior product manager living in Kuala Lumpur and teaching other people about product management, I would have probably told you that you're crazy. Because actually by trade, I'm a biologist. I studied at the University of Stuttgart, which is close to where I grew up in Germany, south of Germany. And going into it, I was really, really interested in how the world works and how the human body works, how biology works, how cells work, all of that. But actually, while I was in my graduate studies, so trying to finish my master's, I got the opportunity to go into ISEC, which is a global nonprofit. Which usually starts out, you usually start out as a volunteer. So just during my studies, I was volunteering, helping people to go abroad and find social or practical internships abroad. But they gave the opportunity to be an IT project manager for 1 year. And I took that opportunity and realized that there's a lot of value that I can add by organizing things being more agile and having a more product-centered approach. So I quickly turned my role into being a product manager instead of a project manager, and stayed there with 3 years, finally then making it to head of product. And during the end of that experience, I also joined my friends who are running a pre-revenue startup called Educately, where we're trying to connect students with educational opportunities in their own country or abroad. So trying to build an open multi-sided marketplace there. Where also, I mean, here head of product is a big title, but basically I'm the product guy of our small team. But since last year, I joined Fave as a senior, initially joined as a product manager, and within 9 months, then I got promoted to senior product manager. And Fave is a marketplace for online to offline. So as a customer, you download the Fave app and you can find different offerings, deals. We offer cashback for payments. And all of that, and we basically try to try to give you the best experience that you can have at your local shops, your coffee places, massage places, etc. While also serving in the best way to the merchants. So we also have a merchant app that we're trying to improve and make it smoother to run the operations. So I think what you can see from my journey so far is that I've had a lot of experiences in building open and multi-sided marketplaces, two-sided marketplaces, or even more sides to it, and trying to figure out what are the different levers and how you can make the whole ecosystem more efficient, but also govern it more efficiently as the platform provider. So in case you have any questions around that, I'm also happy to dig in. But now going more into the topic today, because communication, I mean, it's probably important for every job, and everyone could talk endlessly of what is good communication, bad communication. But I think it's important for us to understand what good communication is for product managers specifically. Because as product managers, you are right in between UX, business, and tech. That means you don't only have to learn how to speak like them, so learning how to use the jargon that all these different departments use, but also communicate effectively with them by understanding what their motivations are, how you can influence them, what are their goals, and then basically how you can make sure that everyone is aligned to producing the outcomes that you want for the product that you're managing. So basically, specifically, what is communication for product managers? And I think going a little bit more context, what communication means for product managers, I want to show you an example that I think a lot of new product managers experience a lot. I mean, we have all these tools that we need to stay in touch with, how we communicate with people around PRDs. We need to follow up with comments with the designers on Figma. We have meetings, emails. And in the end, what we end up being very often is only a mailman whose responsibility is to bring information from point A to point B, summarize the meeting notes, prepare them for the sprint meeting, etc. And you end up just being a scribe, just writing down what is happening. But that's not what we want. We want to be able to drive a certain outcome. So experienced product managers or master communicators, they actually anticipate what kind of communication is needed from them, and they can plan their schedule around it. And basically what happens is they become from being reactive to proactive. Instead of reacting to the situation and the communication that is needed, they proactively plan for it, and they dominate basically the discussion and are able to influence people in the right direction that they need for their product. And I think this will become more and more important as you advance in your career, from starting as an associate or junior PM up until to a senior product manager or even head of product. And at Fave, we try to structure this, actually, your growth path as a product manager, in a competency model. And I'm showing just 3 quick examples of what are different things that we can have in that competency model, but it spans across the whole scope of responsibilities that you have, from managing people, influencing people, from managing the process and managing the product. But inside people, we have a few competencies. One of them, for example, being product delivery. And if I read them out, for associate PM, you're supposed to be able to communicate product requirements. Sounds very simple. I mean, as associate until senior PM, you have to do it. But as you grow, it turns more into able to work with technical team to manage product development lifecycle. So then it becomes more specific whom you are communicating it to. And lastly, able to influence and drive improvements in the PM tech processes and workflows. So suddenly you're going outside of the scope of your one product that you're managing, and suddenly it starts becoming about influencing how the organization works. And the same with discovery and design, when you're working with the UX people or stakeholder management, that working with business or other C-level stakeholders. So what I want to highlight here is that also as you advance in your career, your communication needs to become more outcome oriented. So you're having a certain goal in mind that you're driving, instead of just being reactive to whatever is needed right now to make sure you can deliver your product. So this was maybe a little bit of brief of what communication is for product managers, but actually we have a lot of other great content that we want to dig into. So I want to show you a framework that you can apply, and then that should help you understand the aspects of communication as product manager. You should be able to build your own communication framework, as well as doing a stakeholder analysis, so to plan what communication is needed from your side at any point in time. And then we're also going to be handling a couple of example situations that you could that you could encounter as working with your stakeholders. But before going into that, I just wanted to ask if there are any other expectations that you guys have that might not be met by what I laid out, that you think I should also mention, just so when I'm going through the slides, I can maybe give another extra example to highlight a certain point. So can just take 1 to 2 minutes here where you can type in the chat if there's anything else that you would like us to get into.
Feel free to ask any question, guys. Okay. Yeah.
Thanks, Arvind. Okay. I guess we're good to continue.
Sure.
But yeah, just I mean, I also have the chat box open, so in case anything comes up, just type and send it along. So going into it, the framework that I want to start with is quite simple. It's the golden circle. Has been widely popularized by Simon Sinek. I'm pretty sure most of you have seen this short 2-minute clip where he basically explains how great companies actually communicate what they're doing, how they're doing it, and why they're doing it. And it basically comes from the idea, start with why. If you start with why, everything that you're saying becomes suddenly much more powerful. Thanks, yeah, we will give examples of these ways of communicating with engineers and tech guys. So I think the only change that I want to propose about the golden circle when you want to apply it for communication is that what becomes who. So whenever you structure your communication, you structure it around why. Why are you doing a certain thing? So what are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? What is the end goal that you're trying to achieve? How is your method of communication? So we'll be going in what are different points in the product development lifecycle or different channels that you need for your communication. And lastly, who? Your stakeholders. Who are you communicating to, and how do you change whatever you're saying or whatever you're writing, written communication, whatever, what you're presenting, how that changes according to who your target audience is. And this can be used for any piece of communication, this framework. It can be used for an everyday message that you send in Slack to one engineer, just going in your mind quickly, oh, am I talking about my why, how, and who, and structuring your sentence like that. But going to PRDs, how you structure your PRDs, starting with why, or when you're giving presentations, large projects, everything can be structured around this framework, and it helps you bring everyone on board and understand where you're coming from. So also the rest of the session, we are going through why, how, and who. So next up, we will be talking about why, the goal, because basically there's always an end goal to your communication. You should never just, there's usually not a situation where you're just communicating for the sake of communicating. If that is the case, then probably you're being in a reactive mode and you're just passing information along that is just there, but you're not controlling the conversation. You're not working outcome oriented. So there's different things that could be your end goal of communication. Maybe you're working on a project and timely delivery is very important. So if that is your end goal, that you want this project to be done timely, then that is actually at the core of whatever you're saying. Whenever you're communicating, whenever you're having a piece of communication, you start with, okay, we want to deliver this on time, and that's why we're doing it this way, and going like this. Similarly, if you're solving a certain problem, let's say you are the PM for a recommendation engine, and there's a certain outcome that you want to achieve. You don't want to just build a recommendation engine, but actually you want to maybe increase the click-through rate of a certain offering on a certain page. So then that becomes the center of your communication. Or if your goal is about educating people, maybe right now you're running you're running an initiative inside your organization to teach them a new process or something, then also always putting that end goal at the center. And I think what will happen is that you will feel like you sound like a broken record. I think a lot of times product managers or general leaders in organizations sound like broken records, because to initiate a change or to achieve a certain goal takes longer than just saying it once. You need to keep saying it all the time. You will feel stupid saying it, but actually that's what makes it so powerful, and that's what will stick with people. So for example, I was managing a product where it was an end-to-end product working both for consumers as well as for merchants. The end goal was to drive efficiency for the merchants in their workflow when they were serving customers at the table. So everything we were doing was supposed to be centered around that. We could have also easily gone off path and built the best experience for our consumers, but that would not have served the end goal. So in every meeting, in every sprint meeting, in every discussion with the engineers or the stakeholders or the designers, I was always repeating that goal. We are doing this to drive efficiency for the merchants. And that's why we have to do this, until it became ingrained in each and every member of the product team or the project team, and they were repeating the same message. And then it became a natural part of everyone's work. But that helped me align everyone around that same goal. Otherwise, they might divert from your vision or your goal, and the outcome that the product that is being delivered is not matching what it is supposed to do. And I think one piece is also important is understanding how can you actually find that goal. I think in a lot of companies, we are using OKRs. So that's definitely a good way where you're following the company objective, builds a departmental objective, and you're deriving your objective from that. And so basically, what is your why for every project or product that you're working on should be reflected in your OKRs. Some companies might be using North Star metric, or just having the company vision could be enough, or following the product kata. There will be something in your organization that you're following that will be your goal. If there's not, then you should probably work with your department or with your manager that actually you have your goal that you can always fall back to. But not only do you need to have your own goal, it also becomes very powerful if all your stakeholders are aligned to it. So that's actually why OKRs are very powerful. because everybody's goal should be derived from the same company objective. So in the end, everything should be aligned. So when your goal is the same goal as your stakeholders' goal, it will make any conversation much easier down the line when it gets to that. So then we've covered the who, the why, your goals, and now we're moving on to what are different methods of communications. And the first one is basically the forms of communication. So whenever you are communicating as a product manager, it will fall into one of these buckets. It can be written or verbal, and it can be informal or formal. So it can be formal written communication, or it can be verbal informal communication. So some examples for written are your PRDs, user stories, acceptance criteria, but also roadmaps, flowcharts when you're writing your go-to-market plans. In terms of verbal, you have your meetings, stand-ups, status updates, and all of them are important forms of communications that you need to actually apply your communication framework. None of these should be treated like I just show up for it and I do whatever is needed. So what that means actually is when you have meetings or when you're preparing your different written communication, you actually you apply that framework again, the golden circle. So why, how, and who, and then according to that, you change how your narrative, how your communication is in that certain piece. For meetings, that also means probably you start scheduling like 15 minutes for yourself before every meeting that you prepare, and you lay that out for yourself. Maybe you write it down, or you just reflect upon it in your head, and then that makes you show up in that meeting prepared and ready to drive the certain outcome that you want. But I think next to formal, there's also a lot of informal opportunities where you should still not let your guard down and keep your line of communication. So it can be your water cooler meetings. I mean, now with remote work, that doesn't happen as much, or meeting people for lunch also doesn't happen as much, but still you're communicating with people in Slack. And it's very easy to just offhand, get the message out that you want to get out, but actually you should always remember your communication framework to also drive the point home there. And formal, already mentioned, like your status updates, strategy decks, release reviews, or your emails. And I think one example that I can give here that is quite important, and not to discount any of these different forms of communications. I recently was in a situation where I was meeting some of my engineers for just we were going for dinner, so it didn't have any context with work, but it was only people from work, only my direct engineers, and naturally the communication, the discussion, what we were talking about, our conversation also went to work at one point, and then they started asking me about my opinion for very let's say sensitive topics, like about recent layoffs or the company strategy or whatever we were working on. And it would have been very easy for myself to let my guard down and just not think about what I'm saying and say whatever comes to my mind, because it was after working hours. I was just having dinner with friends, right? But here it's important to know they still look at you as the product leader, as the person representing the product. And they actually look up to you in a lot of situations, and they will follow whatever you say. So even in that situation, it was important for me to keep my why. What is my end goal? What am I driving home? When I was with every single thing that I was saying, and I think that illustrates the point that actually, as your main job as product manager is communication, that never stops, and every point of communication that you have is important in every form, every moment. So then going into these moments of communication, I want to lay down basically the product development lifecycle. This specific one is how we illustrated in Fave, going from discovery, meaning you are in the problem space, you're trying to figure out what are you actually trying to solve. You go into designing the solution with your product design team. Then it goes into delivery, where the engineers develop whatever feature or product you're working on. Then it goes through QA, where it's being tested. You launch it together with the product marketing team, and then you iterate on your feature launch. You have your analytics set up, and you see what is the improvement that you can run. I'm pretty sure in every organization, the product development lifecycle will look similar. Maybe not exactly the same, but it will follow the same basic steps. And basically any of these forms of communication that we were mentioning in the previous slide, they will fall somewhere along these moments of communication. So when you're starting off with the discovery phase, that's where you might be starting to on your PRE. And for the designers, they receive the design brief from your side. Delivery, that gets translated into user stories, and then later in the acceptance criteria, and when you're launching it into the go-to-market plan, and when you're iterating and running further releases, also all that goes into the release review. And each of these moments of communication, they should follow the same structure. Like if you manage to follow your structure of who, what, why, what, and to whom, then in each of these points, actually everyone that you're working on will be aligned. And because you are managing the different stakeholders accordingly for the different moments of communication, then everyone knows what they're doing. And that requires you to spend a little bit more time. You need to do your homework in the first time that you're writing each of these, that you're doing these forms of communication. But then everything else will just work smoothly. Everyone will be aligned, and you will have basically made people follow what you want them, without then having to continue putting in the work. I think that was also a situation I was in when I was an inexperienced product manager, and I was being reactive. I was just, when something new was needed, like, oh, now we need a go-to-market plan, I would just quickly write something together, just so I ticked it off from my to-do list to write a go-to-market plan. I was being reactive. And then, of course, the marketing team didn't really understand what the product was about, and the launch failed. So that's why I think knowing these steps beforehand and making sure you follow your structure diligently from the beginning will make sure that you can drive the best outcomes. So I think here was already a lot of content. What we covered so far, we talked about the golden circle, what is the goal, and how the method. Next, we will talk about the who are your stakeholders. But I think until now, maybe we can just make sure that no questions are left unanswered. So just if there are any questions on the content so far, or anything that you want me to cover, put it in the chat box. And just going into examples of ways to communicate with engineers that will follow. And I think how to be effective communicator in remote working. Just to answer that one question, what I was mentioning before, being very understanding of what are the different moments of communication in the product development lifecycle, and making sure you put in the homework in the written communication, because for remote, written is so much more important. There's much less opportunity for people to, where you have verbal communication. Even in meetings, people might not be paying much attention because they're, I don't know, doing the laundry while they're in the meeting. So making sure that your written communication is crisp, efficient, and following that framework will make sure that you shouldn't have struggled in remote. How to take new ideas and how to take criticism. I think that's the last one before we continue. So I think this will also get clearer when we are talking about the different stakeholders, because the new ideas and the criticism might come from, it's different which stakeholder brings it. If your CEO is giving you criticism, or if someone else is giving criticism, also changes. So I think we will cover that in the next section. So I think good to continue. Let me just take a breather. Cool. So now we'll go more into our stakeholders. So we are going to cover 3 different types of stakeholders that each of us will encounter for sure if you're a product manager. And we will cover what kind of channels and frequency they would expect, but also what are their wants, like their motivations, or their fears, like what they don't want to happen. And understanding this for each of your stakeholders actually allows you to tailor your communication specifically to them. So for the first one, I will just explain it to you, so you also understand how this framework here works. But then I think for the ones afterwards, we can also have the audience give some examples or give the suggestions of what it should be. So the first one is the engineering lead. So let's say in my case at Fave, our engineering lead is basically the person that I talk to the most when it comes to engineering. The engineering team is organized like, let's say, 5 engineers, and they have one engineering lead. Together, we are basically responsible for the well-being of the team, but also for the delivery of the product. So we don't necessarily have a Scrum Master at Fave. Both of us, I as product manager and the engineering lead, we kind of take that responsibility together, and just depending on our different strengths, we do certain different things when we are managing the process. But that might be different in your company. But I think what's important to understand, not only for your engineering lead, but the engineering team overall, is like, how do they want communication to be? So one thing to keep in mind is engineers are probably very busy. So they are working, they're coding at any given moment in time. And every time that you disrupt them, they need to switch context. So let's say if you're working remote, maybe you might just try calling them on WhatsApp or calling them on Slack. Or if you're actually in office, you might just be going to the desk. But that actually puts them out of the headspace, out of the focused work. So that's why the preferred channels for engineers are usually asynchronous communication methods. So in Slack, they don't have to get back to you right away, or even on Jira, they just need to check the ticket and make sure everything is there. If you're using Jira or, I don't know, Trello or any other project management tool. In terms of frequency, I think what is very important also to understand is that they probably want you to be constantly in touch with them in case there are any changes, and proactively. What that means, for example, if requirements change, I don't know, you realize from the QA team that you were not handling an edge case properly, then and that requires changes on the piece of software that they're working on, then they don't want you to tell them in the next stand-up, like, hey, there's a change, but actually they want you to tell them immediately, hey, I know you're working on this thing, and there's going to be a change here. So they're always aware, and they don't have to do double work. And in terms of wants and fears, like their motivations, usually they prioritize, they want structured communication. If it's messy, if your communication is messy and all over the place, they will have to put the thinking in themselves, and that distracts them from doing the actual work that they're supposed to do. And if they don't understand what you need from them, if they don't understand your goal and like why they're doing what they're doing, and then they might not be able to do the best work. Usually engineers also want to be doing things right. So that means, like in software development, there's usually a right way to do something, which might not necessarily be the easiest way or the fastest way. Like when you write code, you want it to be efficient and scalable. And they also prioritize focused working time. So when it comes to booking meetings, they want to reduce the amount of meetings that they have to be in. In terms of fears, they don't want to build products that are accruing technical debt. As I already said, they don't want useless meetings. And what's also very important for them is that work in progress to be canceled, or that actually work that they've already done will not be used. So that's why working with engineers, it's very important that you give them all the information up front, so they can make the right decision on how they will be doing their technical work, so that it will not be canceled. So I think next we can go into the UX designer, and following the same structure, what are the channels, the frequency, what are UX designers' motivations or fears? I think we can take 1-2 minutes from you guys also to put it in the chat. What do you think will be the right points here? Invite UX designer and custom interviews, definitely. So that can be translated into what they want is they want to stay on top and be informed. They want to understand the customer, and they need your help in getting this information. In terms of user-friendly interface is essential. Yes, they will probably prioritize good user experiences, and that over just delivering an MVP that might not have the best user experience. channels, Figma, Canva, perfect, yes. Feedback on designs, yes. And they were to understand exactly what is the feature and how the user would react to it and what are the results. And communication channels could be using wireframes, exactly. So I didn't put it down here, but Figma definitely. So, or any other tool that they're using, I don't know, InVision, wherever you can leave your comments. Probably they want that directly on the prototype so that they properly can understand what the feedback is. But I think also what I experienced working with designers is that they appreciate face to face, meaning it can be virtual meeting, but probably communication via email or via Slack does not always work, because for these things it's probably very hard to articulate your feedback. It's like, oh, I think this screen looks boring. Doesn't tell them anything. So you want to get in a meeting with them or on a call and go through each of the, like through the designs or through the design brief and talk properly about it, because a lot of these things is probably very hard to put into written communication. But yeah, probably also Slack. I mean, they also prioritize focused working time where they're not being distracted. In terms of frequency, I think what I also learned is that they like to have their own process, going through like understanding the design brief. So probably like the experience that I've had is when I would communicate every time I had a new piece of information to the designer, they might get overwhelmed or they might not be able to focus on the right thing, because they usually go a little bit deeper, do their own research, and they might not need all that detailed information as it comes along. So here, maybe what might work better is like having a weekly check-in with them, to just make sure everything is on track. But I think that also depends very much on the individual person that you're working with. And in terms of wants and fears, I think it was already mentioned, they prioritize delivering good experiences, but they also really want influence on the product direction. Because as a UX designer or product designer, you also dig very much deep into, as we were already saying in the chat, for example, user interview sessions, or they also do their own research. So they will also have a good understanding and also an opinion. So they want their opinion also to be heard. And I think the biggest fear is that the project is getting deprioritized. In my experience, as a designer, usually you can fall in love with your ideas quite easily, and of course you want to see them getting to fruition, to get delivered. They also don't want useless meetings, and definitely no micromanagement. Like what I was mentioning before, not being very nitpicky about every little piece of thing, and just communicate the goal properly, and then they'll be able to do their job in the best way. And then we can go into the third example, the business owner. So that will be this person might not exist in every organization. I think it depends also how much responsibility you have as product manager, if how much of the business hat you are wearing, or if there's a counterpiece for you in the business team that is kind of owning the delivery of the sales of the product. But it could also be other senior stakeholders maybe on C-level, but there's usually someone who represents the business, who you also will be working with when it comes to delivering your products. So I think here we can do the same game. What do you think are the channels, the frequency, the wants and fears that this person might have? Monthly, quarterly frequency. Yes, thank you. Okay, if there's no more comments, yeah, business goal accomplishments, exactly. Like how much revenue will this feature bring, or will this allow me to hit my goal? I think that's very important. Logical approach towards development, clear roadmap. Yes, like why are we doing this? Again, what business outcomes will each of these features drive? So for example, yeah, it might be more difficult to communicate to a business owner if you're clearing up technical debt for a month. Yes, and focusing more on business metrics. So channels, definitely I mean, at least in our case, it's very hard to reach them through the more engineering kind of channels that we're using. Like if I tag a business owner on a PRD, or if I Slack them, I might not get my answer as efficiently as I would if I were to write them an email, maybe even text them on WhatsApp or schedule a meeting with them, because that's just more how that's a space that they work in. That's how they communicate with their stakeholders. So that's also where I should communicate with them. So they won't open Slack very often, probably. Frequency, yes, occasionally. So one good method is to just have a monthly product review that you invite them, or maybe bi-weekly, every sprint review, whatever your structure is, but usually not that often. Once, yes, they prioritize business values. So they might be asking, yes, how much revenue does this bring? They usually prioritize speedily delivery. It's like, oh, how fast can we get this out? I have a client waiting for this. Can we get it out fast? And less manual work. So they will also be prioritizing, can we automate certain things that we are doing? Then no clear ROI. So yes, for example, when it comes to technical debt, just saying, oh, we are clearing up technical debt might not be very clear to them. But if you can communicate it like, oh, if we don't clear up this technical debt in 1 month, our database will go down and we will lose $30,000 every hour that we're down, or something like this. Drop in sales, very important. So if you're running experiments, or if you're revamping certain parts of your user experience, it's important that you communicate that every change can also lead to can have a negative impact, and the expectation needs to be managed. And I think also losing control. So they like to be hands-on, and they like to have also influence on the product strategy. And I think if you shut them out, and just say, no, this is my product strategy, that's what I want to do, it's probably also not the best idea. So always keep them on board and make sure that your goals align with their goals. Cool. Now I think also from your side, are there any other stakeholders that come to your mind that are important for you as a product manager that you're working with? There's a small glitch with my animation. Finance team already showing here, should actually pop up. But no worries, there will be some more. So what do you think? What are other stakeholders that you might be working with? QA, service delivery team, risk team. Yes, very good, very good. Operations, yes. Call center. Oh, interesting. Yeah. Marketing, yes. B2B sales team. Cool. Legal team, yes. So some stakeholders actually founder. So there's if the founder is still around, or CEO, basically there's this principle called the source, that the person who came up with the initial business idea in the first place will be always a good source of feedback, and should always be kept in line. Like, you don't want to be working on a product strategy for 6 months and then be ready to launch, and then the founder comes in and says like, hey, this doesn't make sense, we shouldn't be doing this. So make sure that the founder or founders or founding team is always also properly kept on board. Marketing manager or marketing team, yes, as I was explaining earlier, where I failed to keep the marketing team properly in the loop, that led to a failed launch. And these people, they need to be able to communicate your product and the value proposition properly. They're the ones who are managing the sales pages, push notifications, emails, whatever goes out. And you need to work closely with them to ensure that, yeah, the value proposition is properly communicated. There was a question on who is a business owner. So maybe I can explain how it works in Fave, and then that gives you a little bit of better understanding. So, for example, when I'm managing a certain product, let's say I was explaining earlier the table ordering solution, where we would sell to merchants efficiency improvement product that would allow them to serve the meals to customers. So then there is a business owner who manages the sales team that goes out on the ground and sells this product to the merchants. I'm not the one who's managing the sales team, but the sales team needs to be properly onboarded also on the value proposition. Just like your marketing team, when you go out and sell to, let's say, consumers, and the sales team selling to, let's say, businesses, these people, they need to be properly kept in the loop and onboarded, because they're the ones who bring the revenue through selling it. I hope that answered your question, Mohammed. Then also customer, very important stakeholder to always keep in mind. Like make sure that you're in touch with your customer often and you understand also what they actually want and how often they want you to communicate to them when it comes to asking them for customer interviews, etc. Engineer, we already mentioned the engineering lead, but generally the engineering team, your own manager, your own boss, is always important to keep the expectation, to have a direct line of communication, because they're the ones who will help you represent your stakeholder in the, let's say, in the more important meetings that you might not be invited in, but still if they represent and they can properly communicate why you are doing a certain initiative, then they can help you get the buy-in that you need from different departments or people. Operations team, already mentioned, these are the people who usually help implement the product, run the internal things. Yeah, I think this is a good summary of the different kind of stakeholders, but definitely there also mentioned other stakeholders like legal, customer support team, call center, and I think all the same rules apply. And depending on how your operation runs, how your business runs, you might need to keep these people in the loop at different stages. Let's say, for example, we have the requirement to just have a check-in with the legal team whenever we are kicking off any new product initiative. So that's just something I need to be doing. And if I don't do that, then I run the risk that later in the life cycle that we actually have to cancel the product. So yeah, just always important to be aware of all your different stakeholders. So before we go into the last step, where we basically talk about how do we apply all of this content, maybe again, if there are any questions that we need to cover. How to handle critics? Yes. So we will be going into a few situations. Also ad hoc requirements. We'll be talking about this from other teams. Some of the situations. Yeah. Good. How will we ask the update for product without sounding micromanaging? I'm not sure if I understand that question. Maybe you can elaborate on it. Meanwhile, we will already continue and then we will pick up on the question at the end. So I think now, after going through the whole framework, you might be asking yourself, how do we bring all of this together? And I think there's various ways of how to do it. And I think what will help you, on the one hand, we'll be going through some situations, and then it's just being always be mindful of your communication framework that helps you respond to these situations. But I think for larger projects, it's also good to actually have a methodological approach of planning your whole communication out beforehand, so that you stop being reactive and can start being proactive. And that follows also your why, how, and who. And that I call a stakeholder analysis. So basically you think about all your different stakeholders, and then you plan out the channels and the frequency of how you want to communicate with them. And that helps you basically identify not only when do you talk to whom, how do you talk to whom, but also how do you tailor your communication accordingly. And for this, I usually implement a template, a communication plan template. And we will not be going into building it, but I think this is just a simple, like a simple template that you could apply for yourself. So on the left-hand side, you see the part of the stakeholder analysis where I listed stakeholder A to D, and then you have the hopes and fears that you can just list down there for yourself to be reminded whenever you plan the communication with each of the stakeholders. So you could start with oh, stakeholder A is my highest priority stakeholder. That could be your founder or the founding team or the C-level team. Stakeholder B might be then your most important stakeholder might be the business team or the operations team, marketing team, depending on what your product is. And then you just fill it up with all the stakeholders that you want to keep in mind. And then accordingly, you go through the different stages of your product development lifecycle, and you just plan out, okay, in discovery, in order to capture to preemptively work against the fears and highlight the hopes that the certain stakeholder has in each different part of the product development lifecycle. You put it in that specific bracket. Like, let's say for founding team in the discovery, maybe you just set a meeting, or the C-level team, you just set a meeting and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is the goals that we're trying to achieve, so that they are onboarded. Whereas maybe for your operations team, you don't even tell them in the discovery process. Maybe it's far too early there. But then in the design process, once you have the initial designs, maybe you can ask them for feedback, either via email or you set a meeting with them. And planning all of that out from the beginning really helps you to make sure that you, as you go along, you check all the boxes and you're properly prepared and you align it to your golden circle of communication. But that's just a quick example of how you can structure it when you're working on a bigger project. I think what's more important for everyone here is different situations that you might encounter. I think from the questions that I saw also, like how do you work with critics, etc. So the first situation that I want to highlight is, for example, a tech dependency is challenging your timeline. So we were working on an API for our consumer app where we wanted to bring in additional information on reviews. We wanted to summarize reviews for certain offerings. And then the engineering lead told me that actually we don't have this information readily available. So we would have to build another API, which will then delay the timeline, or we pull out the product for this release in order to hit the timeline. Then in this situation, the business owner would say, oh, we cannot delay the release. We will lose the business opportunity we have at hand. So if you would listen to the business owner, you would say, oh, then let's put it out of the release. We don't need it. But the UX designer might say, we cannot ship without this information. It's crucial to the customer journey. And in the end, it's up to you to understand what you do. And I think there's no right or wrong in this situation. It always depends on you, remembering what is your goal. What are you trying to achieve? And then you can tailor your communication accordingly. So let's say in this case, if the end goal was from the beginning that you need to ship as fast as possible, then probably you would rather listen to the business owner, and the UX designer needs to be on board in it, even though they might be a critic in this case. So, but in order not to keep it personal or not to keep it as a matter of opinion, then you use the structure that you had from the beginning, starting with your why, your OKR, or the company vision, product vision, whatever it is, and then you follow that, and that helps as your justification on why you're doing the certain decision to keep it outside, to not include it in the release. But maybe actually your most important goal is not to ship it as fast as possible, but it is more aligned in building a certain user experience. Then maybe your decision might be different. Or you actually bring everyone in the room together and try to find a more creative solution, which could be maybe we can flip it out with different information that we have readily available right now. So there's different ways on how to manage it, but in the end, yeah, always follow your why. Then second situation could be the feature request. I think that's also one thing that was coming up in the question. So a business owner might be saying, oh, I had this great idea. We could do what our competitor is doing, and we built this amazing new thing. So we had the situation that during the lockdown, a lot of competitors were actually starting to do live streaming on Facebook and selling products there. So the idea was we could also implement some sort of live streaming inside our Fave app, just like our competitors like Lazada or Shopee are doing, which are big retail online shopping platforms in the Southeast Asian market. In this case, actually, this kind of feature request should not even reach your team. Like the engineering lead should not get involved, the UX designer should not get involved. The reason being is you don't want to distract them. And that's your job to make sure that the incoming requests, they don't stop your engineers from building the current delivery at hand, and the UX designer also to focus on what they're supposed to focus on. You always think back to the one big idea, your why, your OKRs of what you're doing. And that should allow you to already come back to the business owner saying, yeah, this sounds like a great idea, but it doesn't fit in our current priorities. We have this goal right now, this is our OKR, and this is what we're trying to achieve. Of course, there could be the case that the idea actually makes sense. If it fits into your OKRs, then basically you just put it in your backlog and you prioritize it, and you come back to the engineering or the UX design and see how you can
how you can actually implement it. But in case of the rejection, if you have to communicate with the business owner, probably selecting the kind of language that they would also use could help. So in that specific example, I tied it back to the revenue, because that's how our business owners always talk. If you don't talk revenue, it doesn't make sense to them. If you tell them, oh, that's not our priority, they'll say, oh, but it could bring this much revenue. So then just doing a simple exercise of seeing how many people would be impacted by this, how much extra sales would we generate, and then multiplying this gave us saying, okay, this will bring us this much revenue, but whatever we are building right now will give us that much revenue, which of course will then be a bigger number. And then the business owner is like, oh, okay, makes sense, we're not doing it. So that's how you can easily bring them on your side. And it's not like a you versus you against them, but actually you together working for the best outcome for your product and for your company. And the last situation, I think that's the delivery of bad news, your product being killed. Sometimes it's your responsibility to decide on the sunsetting of a product, and sometimes actually it comes from maybe the C-level or the business owner. So that was a situation that after 6 months, the product has not turned enough revenue, and selling the product to our partners is hard. So we cannot continue supporting it from our side, and the suggestions to drop it. That's also something that I think that was the biggest one of the biggest challenges that I've had so far in my current job, where we decided to sunset one of the products that I helped build and launch. And actually the situation was an engineering lead, oh, we spent 1 year building this, and we actually had concerns in the beginning, wasn't listened to, and kind of like, we told you so. The UX designer being very proactive and solution oriented, oh, we could just run another discovery phase to understand what is the problem and fix it. And here then again, it's basically not only your responsibility to decide what to do, but also how you communicate it. So in our case, the company vision did not reflect this product at all. It was not in our plans. So even though it was very hard to do and very hard to say, in the end, I needed to communicate to the team that we're not doing it, that we're going to kill it, and why we're doing it, basically because it doesn't fit in our product roadmap, it doesn't fit in the kind of goals that we're following. And yeah, I think then it also doesn't become about you being the one making the decision, but actually being actually for the good of the whole company. And you should always communicate from a positive standpoint, not like, oh, we have to kill it because we failed, but actually, yes, the market has changed, and we are here to do the best for the company. So by killing this, we will free up resources that will help us to build better products for our customers. Yeah, but again, it might go differently for you, but in the end, it's always important that you follow your why, and you can tie it back to your OKRs, and you communicate it accordingly to how these different people would expect it. And I think just one quick bonus situation, then we can finish this and go into final questions, because a few people also mentioned it, that they want to know how they can apply this when they are applying for a job. So questions that you might be having in interviews, like, why do you want to move into product management? And you, fresh grad, just out of school, wanting to get a product management job, I think here you can also apply the same golden circle framework that you think about your why. What is your ultimate goal in that specific moment, which is to get that product management job. But then it becomes more understanding about your motivation. Why do you want to go to that specific company that you're applying to? Why do you want to have product management? Why do you want to be in that field, that scale of company, whatever company size it is? And understanding your why, probably even writing it down for yourself, will help you actually answer these kind of questions from when you're applying in a good way, and will help you understand your motivation much better. And it will also help you tailor every communication that you need to do in that job process, in that job application process. Like, you tailor your CV accordingly, you tailor your, if there's a cover letter required, you tailor all of that, and you start telling one compelling story about yourself and why you want to apply for that specific job. And also everything, all the frameworks, they also apply when they ask you to do a case. You should structure it starting from why, how, what, and also thinking about who is going to be reading it. And that will help you do greatly in your job search and break into product management. And with that being said, I think that's where I finish off, and we can use the remaining minutes for any other questions that you guys might have. Any questions, final questions from the audience? Also feel free to reach out to me. You can find me at this email address, or you can just add me on LinkedIn and we can stay connected afterwards. It'd be great to get into conversation with you guys. How all these implemented or worked in Fave? Great question. So most of what I'm sharing, I actually learned in the last year that I worked in Fave. So I used our PM competency model and our product development lifecycle to give the examples. So I think, yeah, all of these currently implemented in Fave, and they do work. So the learning that I had whenever I was following this framework in my communication, then actually people were much more on board. Like my most recent project is a major overhaul of large parts of our consumer application, which requires as many months to work on it actually. And in our company, we always try to be fast fish, meaning that's like one of our hashtags, fast fish, meaning a lot of times we actually deprioritize important technical work in terms of technical debt. So we accrued a lot of technical debt, which made it very hard for our consumer app to scale, launching new products inside the app, how fast we can develop new features. So we decided with the engineering team to do a major overhaul. And I think if I hadn't built this proper communication framework, the communication plan that I showed you earlier, the template, probably along the way, someone would have said, we have to kill this, it's taking too long. But because I properly communicated why we're doing it to all stakeholders, actually everyone is on board and everyone wants to get this thing out. So it's very unlikely that someone will say, oh, this new thing has a higher priority, let's stop what we're doing. And Mohammed, in terms of mental models, I think the best one I would still say is the golden circle. Why, how, what, or why, how, who. Thinking about why you're communicating it, how, like where you are right, what different forms and channels, and then to whom, tailoring your message accordingly. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It can just be when you think about whatever you're trying to say, when you want to speak up, you just run it through your head, like, why am I saying this? What do I want to say? And who do I want to say it to? And that already makes you change your communication. Because usually what humans do is we just communicate the end product of our thought. Like we want to communicate something, we do the thinking, and we say the final output. But we usually don't communicate our whole thought process. So just by communicating that whole thought process, it makes it much easier for people to follow you and buy into what you're saying. How to get buy-in from leadership when cost of implementation is high, but the feature can improve user experience. So here it's important to understand what leadership values. So what is currently the main goal of the company? If you right now your goal is maybe to acquire new clients, new customers, then you need to think about how this feature ties back to that overall metric. I think if you have a good idea for a feature, but it doesn't contribute to what your company is currently focusing on, probably that means your feature actually should not be on top of your backlog. That feature should probably be lower and you should be focusing on something else. Because in the end, if everyone follows the same goals, then whatever you're doing should be aligned, and then there should not be a problem with getting this buy-in. When you're doing your OKRs, they're also always going to be approved by your manager and should be tied to your manager's OKRs, whose OKRs or goals are tied to then the overall company direction. So if you always follow OKRs or some sort of goal setting framework that you have in your organization, and you follow that, shouldn't be an issue. And how do you try to communicate change in product requirement to engineering lead and get them on board with that? I think it did not really change in my initial years as product manager and now. The only change is that I need to do it for more products and maybe on a more higher level. I might not always be thinking about the micro implementation, because for that then I'm working with associate product managers or product managers who are implementing it. But I think communicating change in product requirement is always also starting with why. So probably in the sprint planning or even beforehand, I will already unfreeze the topic, like mention, oh, we have this new idea that we're going to be working on, and it could be a big thing. So we might need to change our priorities. So just mentioning it beforehand, so it doesn't come as a shock. And then when it's about planning it, then again, you start communicating with the why, and that should help your engineers already get on board. So I don't know how much longer we can go overboard, because we're already 3 minutes overboard. If I should keep taking any question that comes in, or how should we continue?
I think so, Laurin. Let's take one more question if there is, and then I think we are good.
Cool. So I think the last question was how to prioritize between different features having equal importance according to OKR. So I think that's a different session altogether, how to manage your backlog. So I will not go deeply into it, but usually when you manage your backlog, you have different kind of prioritization levers. So the one that I like to use is the RISE framework. I think it's been popularized mainly by Intercom, who published it in their book, Intercom on Product Management. And also there's a very good blog post about it. So it's literally like RISE, like what you eat, RISE, the RISE framework. And it stands for reach, impact, not sure what all of them stand for actually, complexity, and let me just explain it. So reach is how many people are going to be affected by this. Impact is how it fits to your goal. Like it could be revenue, dollar impact, also user experience impact. Complexity then means how difficult is it going to be to build for your engineers. And then the last one is like, how confident are you that you are going to hit those numbers? And if you fill that up, it should give you a good prioritization score that does not only factor in OKRs, and then one product or one feature should come out on top. Yeah, I think, yeah, that's it from my side. So thanks a lot. If you have any more questions to me, feel free to reach out to me via LinkedIn or email. Happy to answer any questions. And I also want to thank PM School at this point for having me. Really enjoyed giving this talk. And thanks everyone for attending.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Laurin, for taking the time out on a Saturday evening. I know it's late out there. So I hope, and thank you everyone for attending the session on a Saturday evening. I hope you guys liked it. What we'll do is we'll put the post on LinkedIn with the YouTube link and the content of this slide. Please go to LinkedIn, follow our page, right? Please go and add Laurin if you guys want any, let's say, queries resolved on communication or product management in general. Hope you guys like the session. Have a good weekend. And thank you so much, guys. Good evening.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
See you.
Bye.